fast forward to 2021, when Gelsinger took over, I wrote, look, this company needs to split. And the reason they need to split is the chip business is going to get dragged down by the manufacturing. It's behind. There's losing to AMD in the data center. They're losing in all these places because their chips are just slower because they're built on sort of a process that isn't as good. And so their chip team arguably needs to go to TSMC. On the other hand, for the manufacturing arm to succeed, it needs to not be catering to Intel. It needs to credibly claim to be an independent third party. It needs to standardize on chip design process from Cadence or whatever it might be. And that's the only way that, and even back then was talking about the geopolitics issues and all those sorts of things. And so Gelsinger comes in and he's like, oh, wait, we're building a third-party chip company for this. We're going to set up 2 divisions, but we're not splitting the company. And I supported it. And it was, reasonable arguments. Like AMD used to have its own thing. They split, and their split was a big mess. Global Foundries used to be AMD's manufacturing division. Global Foundries couldn't keep up. They stopped. They didn't make it to EUV. They sort of had to stop. Their performance wasn't there. AMD had to go through all these sort of lawsuits and negotiations and whatever to get out of Global Foundries. They had a purchase agreement to sell the chips. And yes, AMD sort of caught up, but it took a decade when they got to TSMC. And by the way, Global Foundries sort of foundered and never sort of progressed down the line. And Gelsinger's argument is like, look, we've seen this path. Splits are messy. It'll take at least a decade. And the best thing we can do now is build up this division, have it separate, but Intel can be the core customer that gives the volume necessary at a base bit to sort of make this stuff work.
Right. But then it becomes harder to entice third-party customers and build the business out that way.
Right. And I think what I came back to last week is they've made progress. The other thing is they said we're going to do this 5 processes in 4 years sort of thing. And they've done that technically, like they've made Intel 4 and Intel 3 and Intel 20A and Intel 18A. They haven't done any of them truly at scale. And the trick to move down the process node tree, it's not just about making the process, it's doing it at scale. That's the magic. That's what makes TSMC special, is can you actually do this at scale with minimal defects, have acceptable yield, sort of make money. And we don't know if Intel can do that. And there's a lot of years of learning in this going down the stack that they are trying to skip. And I feel like I should have given that a little bit more skepticism. So they have Intel 3. Their argument is we had Intel 3 working in Oregon. We pushed it to Ireland early so that we didn't have to sort of build it twice, but it blew up their margins. Like they say it's fine. We'll get the margins up. I hope so. We didn't see it last quarter. What we saw was what sounds like a node that doesn't have acceptable yields and is losing you a bunch of money. So you fast forward to they're big. Everything is focused on this 18A node. And can they deliver? Don't have an announced major sort of third-party partner.
Benefit of the doubt at this point.
And I guess what the reason I wrote Intel Honesty is this is kind of an admonition to myself, which is anything happened in the last 3 years that changed my prescription from 3 years ago? And the answer is no. I want Intel to succeed. I want Pat Gelsinger to succeed, but they have lots of other operational issues. Like I said, they didn't cut soon enough. They overproduced during COVID. Then they had a huge overhang. Then they didn't sort of see the Qualcomm ARM chip coming. So they're ramping up production of a chip that's made by TSMC that is competitive, but it's going to have terrible margins because they have to pay TSMC to make it. And what I come back to is what do we want in 2035? What do we want to have happening? What I think we want happening is I don't think Intel chips matter that much. it's a viable business, but the question is, do we want another foundry on the leading edge? And by the way, there's a lot, like Intel is important. Intel has traditionally pushed manufacturing forward, and TSMC has followed them. TSMC has not yet truly demonstrated that they are able to lead and push the window. They got to the lead, and there's lots of stories and reasons why Intel fell behind. But when it comes to actually pushing not just a 2 nanometer or 1.4 nanometer, but to 1 nanometer and beyond, Intel does have 30 to 40 years of incredible breakthroughs, a lot of aggressiveness, and really
Moore's law originated at Intel, right?
It does. And having Intel pushing the envelope, they still have great R&D. They still have great sort of innovations. And beyond the having sort of an American or Western company that is a foundry, having competition is good. Having a company with a 40-year record of genuine innovation is good. And so if we want an Intel to succeed, it feels like we want that to be sort of an independent entity that earns its own way. And
I mean, that's my concern. It's like the point of industry subsidies is to jumpstart domestic businesses and make them competitive in the global marketplace. And with Intel, reading your analysis over the last couple of weeks, it seems like there's a broken culture. There's problems with the current structure. And there was a report that Intel's talking to investment bankers and considering potentially splitting the company. The stock, by the way, has lost 59% of its value this year. So clearly you're not the only one who's feeling.
I know. And honestly, that my instinct here is I have a little bit of Andrew Sharp in me. I kind of want to zag when everyone is zigging. And I wrote that originally. It's like, Intel needs some time here. Let them see if they can deliver on 18A. That's what I wrote a couple weeks ago.
I enjoyed it, yeah.
And the reason I sort of circled around is sort of that point. It's like, look, this was my heavily considered position in 2021. If I'm really, really honest with myself, has anything happened to change that prescription? And I don't think it has. And I don't think Intel has sort of, yes, they've separated the divisions into different P&Ls. They've done things around the edges, but is there any sort of assurance that the cultural issues and the ability to earn third-party business and all that sort of stuff that was very much in question? And, you go back to the 2010s, they did do a bit of outside foundry stuff, like Nokia partnered with them to build a chip. And Intel basically effectively bankrupted Nokia because their costs got so out of control and they couldn't get it working appropriately and all these sorts of things. And if you're a third party, if you're a Broadcom or much less an Apple or an AMD who at this, and the question I have is, if I ran one of these third parties, why would I go to Intel? Like what assurances do I have? Yes, in theory, I can get leading edge capacity, which at TSMC, Intel or Apple takes it all. NVIDIA wants to take it all. AMD is always a little behind because they don't get the fastest stuff the first year it's available. They have to wait a year or two until they can sort of get capacity. But TSMC has also sort of made them into what they are. They don't want to even breathe a hint that they would go anywhere else. Like, TSMC has the power here. They get to decide who gets what. And so no one wants to make them upset. So why are you going to roll the dice on this entity? And it's just a real, how do we get from here to there problem. And I don't like my solutions here.